Hello. Since it's Easter, I thought I'd read you a poem, and this one is by John Donne. John Donne again, one of my favourites, and it's called Good Friday, 1613, Riding Westward. And we'll go through it, should we? It's actually quite a difficult poem, and I don't believe that he was riding from Warwickshire to Montgomery in Wales on Good Friday. I should have thought that on Good Friday he would have been at home with his family. So I believe this is a conceit again, but that doesn't make it any the less truthful. What he is doing is he's saying, I'm riding westward on business, and behind me the sun is rising in the east on Good Friday, and I am riding away from it. Not only am I riding away from it, but I am refusing to confront the event of Christ's crucifixion. It hurts my brain to think about it. It's so cruel and so painful. I have to run away from it, and I'm running away to deal with some sort of business affair, a material thing, and I'm trying to get away from this spiritual thing which is coming up behind me, and even though I'm running away from it, I can't ignore it. And even though I don't want to think about the crucifixion, it's there behind me and I can't get it out of my mind, however much or quickly I ride westward. So let's have a look at this poem. Let man's soul be a sphere, and then in this the intelligence that moves devotion is. Now, he's referring to spheres. When I first read this poem, I assumed, because he then talks about, and as the other spheres, by being grown subject to foreign motion, lose their own. So I was thinking, oh my goodness me, he's thinking of planets and the gravity between them. And he died 60 years, something like that, before Newton published his theory of gravity. How could he have known that? But no, you see, the sphere was a very ancient Ptolemaic idea, and we're not thinking about spheres of planets. What we're thinking about is like a sort of series of snow globes, one inside the other. And the planets were travelling over the surfaces of these spheres, and the spheres moved. That's what Pythagoras was talking about, because he thought that when the spheres moved, they made sounds, and that he called the music of the spheres, of which you will have heard. Anyway, so when he's talking about let man's soul be a sphere, he means that there's this sphere inside other spheres. And as the other spheres move, they drag or disturb. They're the ones inside. Sort of idea of the pull of gravity in a way, isn't it? But not that there was a theory about it. Okay, and being by others hurried every day, scarce in a year their natural form obey. So, you know, the sphere might want to revolve in a certain way, but then the other spheres on top of it cause perturbations. And it's those other things that are causing disturbances, and his spiritual being is being disturbed by the other spheres, one of them being the physical sphere, of course. Pleasure or business, so our souls admit for their first mover, and are whirled by it. Hence is't that I am carried towards the west this day, when my soul's form bends towards the east. So he's imagining actually that the sphere that has his soul is going that way, and the sphere that holds his body is going that way. And that's what's propelling his body, while his soul is trying to rotate in the opposite direction, and it's having difficulty, of course. There I should see a sun, the sun that's behind him. There I should see a sun by rising set. Here he's talking, he's a contradiction. It's the fact that Jesus died and then rose. It's a reference to that. At least, look, this is what I think. There are many interpretations of this poem. It is a little obscure, so you can do what you like with a lot of it. And by that setting, endless day begat. So there we have Jesus, who in setting the sun, and I think he's probably making a pun, of course, on Jesus being the Son of God. By setting, by dying, he rose and started an endless day, a period of light. But that Christ on the cross did rise and fall. So he rose on the cross and fell. He was taken down. He died. Sin had eternally benighted all. So before he did that, sin was all over the world. This is Christian theology. I happen to disagree with that personally, but we're talking about what John Donne thinks, not what I think. Yet dare I almost be glad I do not see that spectacle of too much weight for me. So he's saying that even though the crucifixion brought light into the world, I still can't turn towards the east to look at it because it's just too painful. Who sees God's face that is self-life must die? Well, here he's actually referring to the biblical story that Moses wanted to see God when he was on, talking to God, and God said, "You can't see me, you die. It would be too much for you." And also, there's something in what Donne is saying about looking at the sun. I'm talking about the celestial body, because if you look at the sun, you're going to blind yourself, aren't you? It's too painful. So he is conflating the horror of the crucifixion with the splendour of the brightness of the sun. What a death were it then to see God die. So, now he's back to the idea that this whole spectacle of the crucifixion is just too terrible. It will kill you in its terror, in its horror. It made his own lieutenant nature shrink. There were after Christ died on the cross, there were thunderstorms and earthquakes and all sorts of awful natural phenomena. It made his footstool crack, the footstool meaning the earth, God's footstool, and the sun wink. Yeah, there was an eclipse, there was a thunderstorm, there were earthquakes, dead bodies rose out of the ground and walked around Jerusalem. This is what it says in the New Testament. Could I behold those hands which span the poles and tune all spheres at once, pierced with those holes? Those majestic hands wounded with nails. Could I behold that endless height which is zenith to us and our antipodes, the top and bottom of the earth, humbled below us, or that blood which is the seat of all our souls, if not of his, made dirt of dust. Hang on, I'm running out of space here. Or that flesh which was worn by God for his apparel, ragged and torn. So he's talking about the physical aspect of God as Jesus, manifested in Jesus. And he'd taken on the painful apparel of flesh, and then it was ripped apart. If on those things I durst not look, durst I upon his miserable mother cast mine eye? You know, the Virgin Mary, that was often a focus of prayer to Catholics. Remember, Donne was a Catholic. Upon his miserable mother cast mine eye, who was God's partner here, and furnished thus half of that sacrifice which ransom does. It's interesting that he gives this part to the Virgin Mary. She's often depicted in Catholic iconography and thought as the benign motherly figure, but what Donne is saying here, she was a partner to God in producing Jesus, and so this was half her sacrifice as well, which I'm sorry, I had to take a little snivelling break. Gets me every time. He is talking about how a mother produced a child for sacrifice and the pain that she must have had. Now, this is not common. John Donne very much loved his wife and appreciated her partnership with him. He regarded her as a partner, and it's obvious he had this attitude to the Virgin Mary as well, the partner of God. He was way ahead of his time, a most remarkable man. Upon his miserable mother cast mine eye, who was God's partner here, and furnished thus half the sacrifice, which ransom does. So he is paying her proper tribute for what she did. Though these things as I ride be from mine eye, they're present yet unto my memory. Well, yeah, self-explanatory. For that looks towards them, and thou lookst towards me, O Saviour, as thou hangst upon the tree. So even though he's not looking on these things, they're in his mind. Even though he can't see the sun because he's riding away from it, he can feel it on his back. And this image of the Saviour hanging upon the tree, being crucified, is conflated with the sun, which is behind him. It's there, hanging behind him the whole time. And you can see that in the next line. I turn my back to thee, but to receive corrections, till thy mercies bid thee leave. So he's turning his back, but he can feel he's receiving something. Now here he's talking about corrections. That is, reminders that he has his back to God at the moment. Oh, think me worth thine anger, punish me, burn off my rusts and my deformity. That's the sun. He can feel the warmth of the sun behind him, and he knows that what is behind him is actually the crucified Christ. Restore thine image so much by thy grace that thou mayest know me, and I'll turn my face. I do wish I could control myself. A few people have said that they've understood poetry when I've read it to them, whereas they've heard it read by other people and it hasn't meant anything to them. It's been declamatory. Now the thing is, if I read this in a declamatory way, I probably wouldn't be crying. I think that when actors read poems like this in that actorial way, It's to protect themselves from actually feeling the emotion. I'm not a professional actor, so I can't do that. And therefore, when I read this stuff, it really hits me hard. Please like this video. Please share it. Please subscribe. You can help me financially if you want. The links are in the description. Everything's in the description, actually. And may your Easter be filled with peace and spiritual comfort. Till next time.